welcome everyone. Thanks for being here with us. My name is Sarah Madera. I am the founder of Plan Creatively and a career coach for working moms. And I'm here today with Soundari because we've had some really fantastic conversations about how to keep and retain women in the workplace. Soundari, do you want to share a bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for, reaching out and setting up this. I'm so excited about our conversation. So we got connected when Jean-Yves mentioned to me about the work that you do on retaining women at workplace. That was your area of work. You were in Hong Kong, but I missed you here. And we finally connected when you moved to the US. I'm still in Hong Kong, and I'm an organizational consultant. I run this enterprise, which I'm the chief everything officer of Soundbites 11, which is all about building connections and conversations with people. So my big, hairy, audacious goal is to help leaders and teams be more human at work by harnessing the power of storytelling.
I love that. That's so interesting. And I'm so grateful to Genevieve for introducing us. Like you said, I was in Asia for more than a decade, both in Hong Kong and Singapore. We just moved back to the US about a year ago. So even it's a bit new for me to be back in this space. And I'm really happy to be connected with you and connected back to my time in Asia. And I think that this is such an important conversation that we are having around women in the workplace, because it's definitely changing, right? I feel like COVID really pushed forward this conversation, but it's definitely been something that's been brewing for a long time, both, in the East and in the West. In my time in Asia, I definitely was asked some questions like, if I worked, who would watch the kids? And I was asked this by an HR department. I was told mothers don't succeed here. And how difficult it is for working mothers in the workplace, also by a head of HR. So it's definitely a changing dynamic. I'm wondering what you're seeing and what has motivated this conversation on your side in terms of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had some of these questions more from a other side, because I decided to take a career break when we moved to the Middle East from India. And at that time, I was told, oh, what's the point of all this education if you're not going to be working? And I was like quite taken aback, because it was my choice and it's a personal choice of how I want to lead my life. And definitely it was also a reveal moment for me, because when I joined work decades back, I thought work and life would be a ladder. We've only heard of the corporate ladder. And as I navigated the work life, I really found out that it's more like a jungle gym. You're like trying to go and do different things. And in a way, that's been great, because it's helped me create a portfolio career of dipping into doing things which are like passionate about the workspace, women in the workforce, the future of work, D&I, and all that. And that's around the consulting work. But it's also given me the flexibility to go and look at teaching at universities, whether it is for product managers, whether it is for science communication, whether it's for executive MBA programs, and fruitfully also paid forward through a lot of the mentoring programs that I'm involved with. And I think this balance is the flexibility that I was craving for, which I didn't know when I joined work initially.
That's so interesting. And I love how you said that. And it really speaks to not only my experiences, but the experience I hear from clients as well, that they're still ambitious. They want to grow and move and do more and be more, but it doesn't look like climbing the corporate ladder anymore. And they're looking for different ways to find success at work that doesn't compromise their work at, their success at home and their families at home. And it looks really different. It may look like a jungle gym. I love that analogy. And how that they can continue their growth, continue their movement, continue to be multifaceted, interesting people, even as moms and even as women in the workplace. And I think that that's really important. What do you think that women are now looking for in the workplace? Is there any success metrics that they're looking to achieve?
Yeah, I guess it's not just one thing, right? And this again is something that's proven out during the pandemic more than ever so before. We've always wanted that flexibility. We always wanted, like you said, and you want to be aspirational. You want to be, you want to do well in your career. You want to have a great family life. And I'm not keen on words like balance, integration, harmony, and everything else. It's just figuring out. I mean, if you think of it as a wheel of life, we all have different aspects that we want to work on. Work is just one of the aspects.
Yeah.
It does seem to take a disproportionate time, and it does seem to obviously give us a sense of identity because we have that. We want to be associated with that, but it's one of the many things. And it's whether you're a single person, whether you have kids, whether you're married, whatever, in terms of the type of life that you want to lead, how can work really be one of those things that gives joy? And also make it meaningful. We were talking about this before, but I just want to bring it up as well. I have this friend of mine who's an investment banker, really senior investment banker, who broke into that mold when it was not popular for women to be investment bankers because it involved long hours, it involved a lot of traveling and all that. And she talks about a time when she used to go along with her male colleagues to present to clients, and she was not allowed to make a presentation because the clients were not used to having women making presentations there. And then she would go to this boardroom also where there was this empty chair, which was always there. And in the initial meeting, she decided not to ask, why is there an empty chair there in the boardroom? But as the conversation developed, and once they finished their meetings, one of the times she asked them, no, who's this chair for? Why is it always empty? And it was for the wife of the chairman of the board, who had a board position, but had no say. So, and I think this really motivated her to take in charge of some of these conversations, to bring them forward in an industry where these conversations were difficult. So both from a personal level, she decided to, like one of the times she talks about, she went with an all-women team to the client. So the client had no choice but to talk to one of us.
I love it. What do they say, that invention comes out of necessity or something like that?
Yes,
like she
yes.
definitely made that situation, make progress, right? And have it move forward. That's really fascinating. I love that. I also think that women are looking for opportunities to succeed based on their strengths. They're not looking to try to be like men or to fit the mold anymore, but they want to build on the strengths that they have as individuals and be recognized for those, not have to fight to be, even better or more than, or, any of these things, but actually, be heard, be seen, and, have that be reflected, in the quality of the workplace. I think that part of that as well is to feel safe and supported at work as well, right? To hear that you're doing a good job, and to hear that you're being successful, and that you can feel safe to bring your ideas forth. I think that is a big part of it as well. I think that's also really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I was listening to this conversation by this person who used to be the chairperson of the largest bank in India, State Bank, and she's now the chairperson and CEO of Salesforce India. And one of the questions that she gets asked is, how do people deal with 3 M's, which is marriage, maternity, and mobility? I would like to make it, parental responsibilities, but 3 M's sounds like, rhymes better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she said, I would deal with it with 1 P, which is partnership. Partnership at home, in terms of, the tasks that are there as a family, as a unit entity to work together. Partnerships at work, be it with and in this case, be it with your male colleagues, be it with your teams, with your departments, with the organization as a whole. And I thought that was a really nice way, because we can't deal with one without tackling the other. Yeah. Both have to really sync for careers, for men and women and everybody else. For careers to thrive, you need that sync. And I thought that was a really great way of putting it, about creating those partnerships. So I want to actually ask you, Sarah, about more on how can organizations do more One is we talked about individual responsibilities. So I was talking about the investment banker, and the role that she played in creating that move. Some of the things, either individually or as organizations, that could be done.
Well, I was thinking, I really like what you said about the P's, and parental would fit in with those partnerships and those other P's with the second one. So that would actually work. So I'm thinking about what companies can do. I like to think about, the difference between what is equity versus equality. And, in terms of providing these spaces for women, that does often look like equity, right? And it doesn't necessarily look like equal. And that is okay, right? It doesn't mean that everyone has exactly the same thing, but it offers everyone the same opportunity to get to the finish line, to get to whatever their finish line is, whatever their success is. And providing that support for those who need it, whether that is people of color, whether that's women, whether that's marginalized communities, whoever that is, and whatever support that they need in that time in their life, and sort of figuring out what it is that they need so that they can help be more successful. Because those companies that have stronger DEI initiatives are more profitable. And that actually shows that by having this equity, by having this support, that they can have 19% higher revenues from innovation. And companies that have more gender diversity are 25% more likely to experience above average profitability. So not only is this good for the workers but it's good for the company in the end too. And I think that is just such a positive statement about why this is important. And why we need to be, talking about these issues, whether gender issues, at work, and then how at the home can support these as well. Sorry, my cat's going to join us. So
yeah, very important conversation. We need all the support that we can get,
even in the fur bound ways.
Yes.
That can really make a difference, because the fact is that particularly here in the US, and I'm sure that it's true in Asia, in certain countries in Asia as well, that college educated women are outnumbering men. And with that as well, that female entrepreneurship in the US is also up 49%, because women are not seeing the systems and what they want in the most workplaces, so they're going out to create it themselves. So all the more, keep that knowledge, keep that fantastic talent in your company by providing them that support that they need.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I think it's like the thing about entrepreneurship is that it's literally being the change that you want to see. You're not getting it at one place. So I'm going to create an environment. And I know an organization, it's called FlexiBees, where they are creating flexible working options for women who took a career break, who want to come back. It's run by 3 amazing women who are gotten together on this. And they're really creating that platform which they didn't have, the kind of flexibility that they were carving out for. I also want to just linger a minute on what you said about, equity as well. And this is true for organizations in terms of I want to highlight on the parental leave part of it. Yeah. I know that Unilever at one point of time had really worked hard in creating that mechanisms. My friend, and who is now currently the CEO of Chanel, Lena Nair, and she did a lot of work on this, on creating not just the paternal leave structures, but also highlighting and spotlighting people who took it, sharing their experiences.
Oh, beautiful.
So I think capturing those stories and normalizing some of this. And it always makes me think and laugh about, though it's not a laughing situation. In Japan, when they introduced paternity leave, there was this person in an organization who took paternity leave. And when he came back, he was really sidelined from the organization. And we talk about this happening for women, but in certain cultures, it could happen for men as well. And I think that's where organizations can play a very, very important role. I was reading about this organization called Aldi, ALDI.
Yeah, Aldi. Yeah, it's a grocery store. Yeah, here. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
German.
But in the UK, they really wanted to, understand that life circumstances can change very quickly. And in an uncertain world, more people are considering a career which can change with them.
Yeah.
And they had created this thing for both the fathers and mothers. And they talked about, how to make it a great place to work. So there was a guy, Tom Steed, who joined as a graduate area manager in their program when he was 28. And as he was doing it, he realized in between he was married, his wife got pregnant, and he needed flexibility. And when he went and shared to his manager about the good news, my wife's pregnant kind of a thing. And when I was reading this, I was bracing myself, oh, this is not going to go well. But surprisingly, he was offered a range of support options, including training at a store closer to his house, time to take appointments. And as long as he put in effort at work, which they were more than happy to accommodate all the needs that were there. And one time he was halfway through an interview when he got a call that his wife was ready to go to the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
So he just stopped the call, and within a few minutes, the store manager chipped in, took over the interview, and they have something called as cover partnerships for these kind of things. So you work as a team. There's always somebody there to cover your role. And I think that takes away all that pressure of, you're not going to be the only one responsible for everything. And I'm remembering my own situation. There was a time when I was handling a really large role. Two banks where I was working with had a merger, and my role had really become elevated. It was a fantastic time career-wise. But my daughter was also like 6 months kind of a thing. And I was really struggling to find time with her. And I used to read a lot of books at time as well. And I had read about this amazing concept called job sharing. So I was all set to go and talk to my, one-up saying, hey, can we explore something like this? So can I job share with somebody who might be willing? So we are both saying we could, overlap on certain days and all this. So I had all this idea in my head.
Yeah.
But the country, and I was in India at that time, and definitely the organization was not ready for some of these kind of conversations, because it was just not there. The opportunities were not there, the thoughts were not there. But I think re-exploring some of these conversations now might be interesting.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what Aldi is doing. I think that involving men in the caregiving for kids is so important, not only for the men to have relationships with their kids, that are, deeper and more beautiful, but also that is such a great model for the future generations, right? How are we going to change and progress? I mean, right? Literally, our children are our future. And so by letting them see that men are caregivers, that men are, part of the household, that they're not just, dad who goes off to work, that is what changes the future, right? That changes the future workforce, changes future leaders, changes future households. And that's really what makes that big impact that can offer those opportunities. Whether that's, fathers being able to participate, whether, having the workforce look different and home life look different for them, or whether it's job sharing, right? And having the workplace look different for women. I think the idea either way is the same, that the workplace needs to change, right? And to be more adaptive to the circumstances of people and their lives.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, in your work as well, and I see this when I work in D&I and all that, there's a lot of time, sometimes the focus is on corrective action. Oh, women need to go out there. Women need to network. Women need to do this. There are women leadership programs. And I see a benefit for all of it as well, because sometimes you need exclusive focus on a certain area to really work and let that area thrive. I do see that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we used to see here in Hong Kong is that you'd go for a lot of these events organized by women's organizations, and there would hardly be any men coming in. So during one such event, I had made a suggestion that I work solo. So there's literally nobody from my organization that I can get along, but I could bring a friend along, a male colleague along, a male friend that I have who's working in an organization along, to make a much more balanced view in these conversations, part of it. And similarly, people working in organizations, when they go for these events, not treat it as a women-only event, but take a male colleague along. So what do you see as, about the women leadership programs and all that? What is your experience been?
I have two thoughts on that, right? Because I think it is really interesting. It's always, I think, nice to have conversations that are with other women who understand, right? Who are going through what you're going through, have experienced what you've experienced, or something similar, right? So there is value in that. But then there's also that preaching to the choir piece, right? Which doesn't feel as progressive, right? And doesn't feel like we are moving forward and that we're making all the change that we could make. I do kind of think it's interesting, though, that this year particularly, I find, particularly with women in leadership, and I don't even know if it's because, again, women are going out and creating their own opportunities, or because, again, the workplace isn't working for them. But there definitely seems to be the shift in this past year of women at the top pulling back, right? Whether it's women like the CEO of YouTube, the top 3 women at Facebook, the prime ministers, Finland and New Zealand, who are moving back, who are taking a step back, and often they're saying it's due to their families, right? Or that's a piece of it, and not wanting to give up that opportunity with to have that time with their family, or whether they're saying that they can't give as much to their job as that they have because of that, or because for themselves. And so I think that really says a lot, because it's been so dramatic in the past year in terms of all of these women who are stepping back. And what does that mean? And what is that saying? And, where is the responsibility? It can't all lay on all of these women, because it's been so pervasive. What does it say about, the work structure and our work lives right now, that so many women are feeling the need to step back from these amazing leadership positions that they've held for some of these women for, decades, right? Or at least a decade. So I think that's really fascinating. What do you think that says about leadership programs with these women stepping back?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've all been reading a lot about it, right? And sometimes I feel in that sense, women have a disproportionate spotlight on some of these things, because there are so few of them who are in the spotlight to begin with. Anything that they do is under much more scrutiny. I remember writing about this, and there was a BBC article which talked about this. And I'm just saying it as a male CEO who's male rather, who decided to take a step back. And he said, I need more time with my kids because they're growing up years and all. And BBC had covered it extensively, but in a positive light. And a lot of the times, obviously, whether it's Jessica Ardern or, stepping back or anything, the coverage is not necessarily in a positive light. It's a personal decision. She led a nation. She decided that this is the way she wants to spend her life. She doesn't need to be the showcase piece for every other women that followed. And if we have a lot more women doing it anyways, then it's not, the onus and responsibility is not on just a few. So some of this sometimes is, I think, unnecessarily spotlight on this issue. And I understand it's also because there are so few doing it, which is why one of the things that I, as part of my own educational thing, I wanted to do was look at getting onto boards and support onto a Women on Boards program. We just finished that program, and some of the things that came from it is also that we talk a lot about this, but to see it in action, the whole diversity of thinking part of it, how questions are asked in decisions. And one of the recruiters shared about an example where in a board, after a merger of 2 companies, they were talking about rebranding and spending big bucks on the rebranding exercise and all that. And everybody was jumping into that conversation. The only person who had questions about it was an independent director who happened to be a woman who had come into that board. And she said, I looked at this, your last year's spend, and you had spent a huge amount on changing carpets at your organization. So is this rebranding exercise also going to be that huge thing? I mean, we need to look at what is the kind of expenses that we are spending on. So somebody to ask those questions, I think it's important to take on that ownership and lead, and not leave it to a few people to do it. So we need to increase numbers everywhere. So like they say, the base is increased. So there are a lot more people. So the spotlight is not on one. I remember feeling really terrible when Theranos failed. It was almost as if, how can a woman not, run this? again, we tend to put a disproportionate spotlight on some of these. So I think it is an issue, but it's not, I don't want to make it as a women only issue. All of us are going through in these times, going through stress and burnout, and it's happening to everybody. Some people are noticing it and taking action. Some people are still drifting in that path for various reasons. It's not possible to, generalize this conversation.
Yes. I think the best part, I like what you said about a male CEO. It's like identifying a male CEO by his gender, not just a female one. That sort of makes me laugh because yeah, it feels definitely, like you say, it's highlighted more to be a female CEO versus just a CEO, right? Generally across the board, right? I think that's interesting. I do think it's interesting too, what it says about company culture and how important that is, even if you are at the top, right? And in theory, you might be in charge of the company culture, but how impactful that is, and how maybe you don't have full control over it as a CEO, because for sure, the most important factor for employee satisfaction is around that retention. Employee satisfaction and retention is their relationship with their manager, right? People say like, you don't leave a job, you leave bosses. And I think that this shows that it's true, right? There was a study that shows that managers actually impact the mental health of employees more than doctors, more than therapists, and at the same level as their spouse, right? So I think that is just shows again how important it is. And a recent study ranked team and leader support as the most important factor for satisfaction, specifically for working parents, that specifically those who need their work to not just be their life, their life is incorporating more things, and having children, that relationship with their boss is so important. And so almost it's like that manager support, that manager training, is that more important than these women leadership programs? Is that actually going to impact more than some of these more individualized programs, to give them the support that they need? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. No, amazing. It's such a great point, right? It's people leave managers as much as organizations, and this is the person that you're interacting with actually more than you're spending time with your family sometimes. So it becomes such a overwhelming big thing in your mind if your relationship is not okay there. Couple of things. I was actually doing part of my video series. So researching on this lady, Emma Harris from Glow London. Glow is a PR firm working in UK. And she talks about a time when she was head of communications at Eurostar. She had a team of 300, and she would assume that it was natural for the entire team to party till 3 a.m. in the morning, but she would still expect everybody to show up at the desk at 8 a.m. the next day. And I think it was a self-awareness moment for her when health setback happened, to realize that, I wasn't even aware of the kind of impact I was having on my people, the kind of expectations that I was placing on them and on myself, and the kind of health impact and the burnout that is likely to happen. And I think so that whole person leading, making that shift, making that change. And we always say that, when lean in came in, and Sheryl Sandberg, whether it is lean in or lean out, and all those conversations came in, one of the things that got highlighted also is that if managers are leaving, say you're leaving the workplace at 4 p.m. to go and pick up your kid, or to go and attend a show that's the kid's school is putting up. There was a guy who would loudly announce it to his team when he was leaving, just so that it legitimizes it and normalizes it for everybody else to do it. So sometimes you need to make that big noise about things that are doing, question them and ask them. And the other part is when you're at the top, really make that change as well. It's a very small anecdote that happened with Indra Nooyi. One of the pathways leading to her office used to be a very rough cobble path. Earlier, there were only male CEOs, male department heads, and all who were walking, who normally wore, shoes which didn't get affected by the cobble path. And she said, I would walk past that and my heels would get stuck, and it was very uncomfortable. And one of the first few things she did when she took the corner office was to level that path up.
I love that. Yeah.
So it's the equivalent of creating that level playing field, the equity angle there.
Yeah, like the literal version of it. I love it. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, so I love that, and that you brought it back to kind of that equity versus equality conversation and how to make it. So what are ways that employers can sort of make it fair or make it equitable? What are some of the options that they have in terms of those choices?
Well, I'd love to hear more from you also about it, because that's like the core work that you're doing. One is on, like you mentioned, about being heard, creating that psychological safe space for people to raise issues. An organization may not get everything right, or and I don't want to. Organization is, after all, a bunch of people who are working there.
Right.
So there is no entity called an organization. It's the people there, right? So creating that space where people can raise issues, be heard, acknowledge, question policies, look for actioning some of those policies, being able to talk about it, implementing this. I think just that space is so crucial. And I think this differs across the world. I was speaking with somebody else on psychological safety, and I felt that it was almost like a Maslow's hierarchy. At a very base level, you just want, you want your pay and you want your paycheck and you want to be able to go home. That's a very basic level. Then moving it up one notch, are you having a good relationship with your team and all that? The final pinnacle would be where you are able to question, change, and action policies when you see things which are out of sync, and especially for talent management issues, especially around how do you create workspaces which can retain. And there is no one size fit all. There's no cookie cutter version on this, right? I might have a requirement that, like how I might want to travel with my newborn, and I want to have a facility where I can feed the child while I'm traveling on work.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of entrepreneurial ventures which came out of it. There was this organization, I forget the name of the organization, but in the US, which would help courier express milk bottles along. You could take them safely and go, and things like that. So really creating, while keeping the overall policy framework, creating so much of flexibility in it so that it meets everybody's requirement, and people feel that, yeah, fine, the organization is trying to do this for me. I have this, I was heard, I was listened to, and things were changed, things were implemented. What has been, if you have to think of one or two things which in your work you've seen work well at organization, what would those be, Sarah?
Yeah, I really love how you said about the hearing employees and implementing based on that. I think that is like so key to implementing any strategy, right? Is asking employees what they want, and then, noting your demographics. If there are a lot of people who are asking for, like you say, like breast milk shipping because they travel a lot, that's really important. If there's a lot of employees who are asking for gym memberships or meditation apps or whatever it is that they need to help them feel more productive and more safe in order to do their job. But so I think that's a key thing, and that as well that people are asking for is flexible benefits that can be used in various ways. So it's not like everyone has to use breast milk shipping, because obviously that doesn't apply to everyone, but maybe it is some kind of benefit wallet, so that if you want to use towards a gym membership, or if you want to use it towards breast milk shipping, or if you want to use it towards childcare, that those kinds of options that you have that are, then applicable. So it doesn't feel like you have to have a one size fits all policy, but rather here's a policy with, a bevy of options, right? That people can take advantage of depending on where their needs are. And that way it also works for employees at various stages. So if you have like very young employees who aren't maybe as worried yet about the childcare needs, or you have older employees who have kids who are no longer there and they have different needs, right? So by having those kind of flexible options, you can really, if you do have that kind of varied workforce, you can make sure that you're providing support no matter where they are. If they're going through a divorce, if a spouse died, if they're having kids, like no matter what their stage is, having those choices and those flexibilities. So again, it's not a one size fits all. It's not like a fair approach. That offers your employees so much more support. And I just think that is really beautiful when that can happen, when they feel supported at work.
I love the idea of wellness wallet. Really, being able to dip into various things that might resonate with you, and which is so specifically in that sense, it's customized for you, but it's available as a buffet. And you
Yeah.
can like just go and pick things that work for you and all that. I really like that part of it. And I mean, it always makes me think that sometimes it's the small things that make a difference. I was listening to this conversation that Frances Frey, Frei, again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her surname. She's a professor at Harvard, and she did that epic work with Uber when all those issues were going on with Uber. She was talking about a particular hospital where the nurses were leaving disproportionately.
Mm.
They went and said, yeah, what's happening here? I mean, is the boss rude? What is happening in the organization? What's going on? And they found out that the reason was broken photocopier machines.
What? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
exactly. What? That's because they had to, at the end of the shift, they had to take copies of some of the reports, and they would go on a floor where the photocopier was, and that would be working. So they would spend their time going up and down the stairs, trying to find a working photocopier machine. And they would cross each other when they were doing that, and they would roll their eyes and say, we are really valued here. What the hell kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this was making them leave that job. So sometimes, we need the big bang fix, which could be something like what Salesforce did in terms of saying that, we want to create gender pay parity. We will do a one swipe wipe thing and, invest billions of dollars and doing that, which is very important. Or sometimes the organization actually is doing well on certain parameters. It's a small things like the photocopying machine, which is
Yeah.
causing a problem. So looking at making those changes, small or big, that would really also make people feel valued, supported, and wanting to just get into work, making that joyous, entry into work, whether it's or logging onto a Zoom call or getting actually into a workplace.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like that what you were just so on, that was so key about having people feel valued, right? And having them feel heard and valued is just, I think, probably the number one and two things that companies can do to really make a difference to, both retain and engage employees, no matter who they are, which is really important. And I guess I'm also wondering, I wonder what partners are doing at home to kind of help each other feel supported and heard in the home front as well. Because obviously, if you are worried about what's happening at home, no matter what it is, it's going to be hard to focus at work and be present and make strides. If you're worried about whether it's making your rent payment or who's taking care of the kids, who's taking care of your parents, no matter what it is, if you are feeling like uncertain or uncomfortable, unhappy about those things at work and not feeling that same sort of value and being heard, it's going to be tough to be at work and focus at work. What do you think about that?
It's back to that. Yeah. It's back to that 3M and 1P.
Yeah.
2 Ps now we have 2 Ps now, but it's back to that, I think. And I think just to take some more self-ownership on that as well. And this is an article that I read in Guardian, where there was a woman who had just given birth to a young baby. The partner, who happened to be a male, was also chipping in with the bath and all that. And as she was watching it, her mom came and stayed with her for a bit to help her settle down because she had, I think, another kid as well. And as the mom was watching it, she saw that this new mother was like trying to instruct the new dad. Oh, no, hold the baby this way. Oh, do this and do that. And I think sometimes we don't let go. So the mom, actually, her mother called her aside and said, don't be an expert in some of these things, or don't try to be an expert. It's a learning journey. Everybody will learn. And if you try to do that, you're not letting go of some of the responsibility in your head, and which as a result, then you're going to make yourself, run yourself to the ground, trying to be that perfect everything in everything,
Yeah.
part of it. So trust your partner,
Yeah.
trust that things will work.
Yeah.
That's the only way partnerships can work, which will help you navigate everything else in life. So I thought that was a pretty good piece of advice as well. Don't be an expert.
Yeah, I like that maternal gatekeeping, right? That I feel like women are often accused of, although, I think accused of maybe so that they don't have to become experts, but, we'll see. I think that there was like a really good quote, and I apologize that I can't remember who to credit it to, but it was such a good quote about, boomers did a really good job of teaching their daughters that they could be anything that they want to be, but they didn't teach their sons what that meant for them. What that impact that would make when women were, the prime ministers and were CEOs. What does that mean for the partner and for the partnership? That it may not look like what your parents' relationship looked like, that there will be a different model. And so I think that that's really interesting. And, I do think that I see from my clients and from what I hear that, men are looking to be different than their fathers, that they are looking to have deeper relationships with their children. They are looking to be more involved at home, but they don't always know how. And it's almost like this place of privilege that they're coming from, that they've never had to think about how to burp a baby or whatever the case may be, right? And they've never had to become experts in this, never seen, that model to them. And so it's really oh, what? I have to order new jackets because it's winter time, and the kids have grown, it's sort of coming from this place of just complete ignorance, that they really just don't know what it is that's needed, to sort of help take care of the household and to help take care of the kids. So how can we get past this phase, in sort of our domesticity, so that again, we are able to move forward more at work? What are some of the options that we can do in the home?
Yeah. I mean, I want to bring the conversation back to the organizational side of it, because home, I think, is also so diverse for different people. I also want to add on that women also equally need to take responsibility of financial decisions. When we say that men have a certain privilege about, not looking at some of the domestic aspects, I think sometimes in families, women let go of the financial side of it. And it's sort of almost then those polarizing stereotypes play themselves out.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at partnership, I think it is both on managing your finances, managing the home, literally taking it as, and I look at it, literally not doing the, in this case, him versus her kind of a thing, but us versus the problem.
Yeah.
What are we trying to work towards? And as a family, take a call about how things work at home, and hence facilitate some of the things that can happen at work. But taking the conversation, I mean, I'm just conscious of our time. I know we always have a great time discussing, and this is like, tip of the iceberg kind of thing in some ways. What are one or two things that we can talk about in terms of, organizational conversations? And I'm a big one for having facilitated conversations around these topics at organizations as a way to build culture. Also bring out some of the stories, any of the things that play out. If we say that, oh, this is how our organization is, it's always a result of some behavior that's playing out in the organization. So if you dig deeper, there's a story behind it. So how can we work with organizations to really facilitate these conversations? So the organization for itself then can create a template, a guideline, a way to work forward, kind of a conversation. What are your thoughts on that, Sarah?
I love that. I think that conversations and getting that information, finding out what employees want and need, so that companies can respond to them, right? Without getting to these stories, without getting to, understanding what these biases are, without understanding where these stories started, and without, it will be really difficult to move forward and figure out what it is, how you can support them. So I think that is super important. I think that's such a great point in terms of moving forward. I also think that figuring out how, again, to respond to those needs, helping them feel valued and respected, and whether that is part of, creating that, again, that psychological safety so that they feel comfortable asking, they feel comfortable being able to state it, to be able to talk about, their stories and, why they feel this way, creating that sort of atmosphere and culture, I think is also really important. What else? What else? What
I
else?
think, at the risk of a gentle plug, this is some of the work that we do with organizations, right? Getting in there, trying to figure out ways in which things can work for them, looking at there could be a policy statement which is made, but it could just be a policy statement which is like a value on the wall, whereas how it translates and plays out in practice is quite different. So really digging deeper at looking at, like you said, some of the unconscious biases that are playing out for men and women. Yeah, I think it hits everybody and other genders and everybody. It hits. I think some of these biases hit until they hit, we are not aware of it. But
Yeah.
once we have the awareness, how are we moving it to action?
Yeah.
What is it that we can? So I really like organizations, and some of the places where I've seen a lot of change is when I've worked with organization and the organization has invested top management involvement in it, on having these discussions and conversations, and seeing and creating a way forward map for themselves, a roadmap where they are taking conscious action on some of these issues which are becoming aware.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree with that. It's not enough to know that you have a problem, but it's enough, that you need to have the action to figure out how to solve it, how to address it, how to work forward and start to make that change. Even if it's small steps at a time, it's still worth it to just be making that change, to acknowledge that there is a problem and that, that there are steps to be taken to work forward, and make it better for your employees, especially if you want to retain and engage them.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally with you. And I think that's why the work that you do and the work that I do, I feel really drive some of these conversations with the organizations, on mindsets, on behaviors, on working at how do you coach people and teams to make this a habit, to convert a thought into a habit and actionable templates for the organization. So really enjoyed this conversation, and I feel like so many nuggets for me to think about from what you said, Sarah.
Same.
I look forward to continuing this discussion and taking it forward.
Me too. And thanks everyone for being here and listening today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.